Hi, I'm John, and I'm here from Christ Church, and this is a great day because it's the first Sunday in November, and we're studying the series, Life, What's the Point? And we're meeting together in Christ Church and online, and we're all together. So a couple of weeks ago, Nate gave us a fascinating overview of Ecclesiastes, and hopefully you've taken the time to read the book, or you'll do it this week, and also to watch the videos on Bible Project that are very helpful in understanding. And so the second week, Nate talked about Solomon narrating his pursuit of finding meaning. What's the point of life? And his pursuit of pleasure. And today we're talking about his pursuit of wisdom. And so my question is, how long does it take to become wise? Is it a question of time, age, effort? We're going to read some of the text together. And I'm reading from the New Living Translation, and I'll skip some verses. So really, to get the full context, you need to read at home. But I'll start in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 12. I, the teacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. I applied my mind to study and to explore by wisdom all that is done under the heavens. What a heavy burden God has laid on mankind. Verse 16, I said to myself, look, I have increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I have experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. And then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom. Chapter 2, verse 9 says, I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for all my toil. So I decided to compare wisdom with foolishness and madness. For who can do this better than I, the king? I thought, wisdom is better than foolishness, just as light is better than darkness. For the wise can see where they're going, but the fools walk in the dark. Yet I saw that the wise and the fools share the same fate. Both will die. And so I said to myself, since I will end up the same as the fool, what's the value of all my wisdom? This is all so meaningless. For the wise and the foolish both die. The wise will not be remembered any longer than the fool. In the days to come, both will be forgotten. So I came to hate life, because everything done here under the sun is so troubling. Everything is meaningless, like chasing after the wind. I gave up in despair, questioning the value of all my hard work in the world. Some people work hard with knowledge and skill, and then they must leave the fruit of their efforts to someone who hasn't even worked for it. And I find this too meaningless, a great injustice. Now, I say, I've been reading the Solomon's words, that the author, the teacher, is disillusioned in part because he has unrealistic expectations from life, and because his search for meaning is essentially self-centered. He studies, works, pursues pleasure with the goal of self-satisfaction. He is discontent, always waiting for more. He achieves something only to wish that he could achieve something else. However, in all his searching and learning, he has learned some excellent insight. So I want to read some more of his thoughts. Chapter 4, verse 13 says, better a poor but wise youth than an old but foolish king who no longer knows how to listen to advice. One of my fears in life is to become an old fool who doesn't know how to listen. Now let's see what he writes in chapter 7. A good reputation is more valuable than costly perfume. Your integrity, in other words, is worth more than your appearance. He writes, the day of death is better than the day of birth. And I think he means your legacy is worth more than your potential. Sadness is better than laughter because a sad face can be good for the heart. I think he means that to express sadness and pain is natural and honest. A wise person thinks a lot about death, while a fool thinks only about having a good time. I think he means a person who thinks about the future consequences of their choices and actions is wise, but a person who lives only for the moment is foolish. Verse 9 says, control your temper, for anger labels you as a fool. This couldn't be any more practical, relevant, and wise. Because pleasure, money, wisdom, none of these can ever fully satisfy because they are not an end in themselves. They are means to an end. They're the tools to help you accomplish an end goal or a purpose in your life. What is the purpose, the end goal, the legacy, the contribution that you would like to make, that you hope to make with your life, knowing that life is like a flower in the field that blooms and quickly fades? But the legacy of your life will impact future generations. When we contemplate and reflect on these things, we gain wisdom. The author says in verse 23, I have always tried my best to let wisdom guide my thoughts and actions. I said to myself, I'm determined to be wise, but that didn't work. Wisdom is always distant and difficult to find. I searched everywhere, determined to find wisdom and to understand the reason for things. I was determined to prove to myself that wickedness is stupid and that foolishness is madness. Verse 26, I discovered that a seductive woman is a trap more bitter than death. Her passion is a snare and her soft hands are chains. Those who are pleasing to God will escape her, but sinners will be caught in her snare. Now, I read this and I thought, let's be careful. The bitterness mentioned is not the proverbial woman who seduces the man. The bitter trap is to be a person who lives a life driven by impulse and pleasure without considering the consequences. Proverbs talks a lot about the foolishness, madness, and damage caused to many people by lifestyles of casual sex, frivolous spending, and the superficiality of ignoring the suffering of others. This type of living causes great damage because it doesn't develop an other-centered heart. It treats people like objects, and it deprives future generations of a legacy that provides the example and inspiration to build their lives with dignity and moral value. Verse 27 says this, This is my conclusion, says the teacher. I discovered this after looking at the matter from every possible angle. Though I have searched repeatedly, I have not found yet what I was looking for. But I did find this. God created people perfectly, but the people have made a mess of it. Verse 16, in my search for wisdom and in my observation of people's burdens here on earth, I discovered that their ceaseless activity, day and night, I realized that no one can ever discover everything that God is doing under the sun. Not even the wisest people discover everything, no matter what they claim. And I say, to accept that life is a mystery is wisdom. Solomon's difficulty in this stage of his search seems to be that he is trying to discover meaning by depending completely on what he can do with his own effort. He makes a magnificent and noble effort, but he is relying completely on himself. Solomon struggled to discover the point, the significance to life. He narrated his journey of doubts and he made his conclusions. One day, Jesus appeared in the same city of Jerusalem, and he announced, "One greater than Solomon is here." Luke 11:31. Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." Now be careful here. This is not a phrase meant to exclude people. This is a strong promise, a faithful affirmation, an invitation to know that a way does exist, a truth, and a life where love reigns, and we find our ultimate satisfaction and fulfillment in being ourselves, being sufficient, and being loved. A fulfilling life in the midst of adversity and difficulty. Jesus wanted the people to think, to pray, to reflect, to pay attention. This is the pathway to real wisdom. He wanted everyone to understand that a meaningful life comes from trusting in God, living with hope, and serving with love. True wisdom is actually a gift from God. James, the brother of Jesus, wrote, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault." That's what Solomon did. 1 Kings chapter 3, verses 1 to 15 tells the story. One night God appeared to Solomon in a dream and told him to ask for whatever he wanted. Solomon asked for wisdom to govern well and to discern right from wrong. And God gave him wisdom. Today we're going to draw close to God through the symbols of the Last Supper. We will come as we are, here in the chapel or in our homes where we are. Communion is a special space to celebrate God's presence, to remember Christ's sacrifice, to affirm our faith. This is a space where we can ask God for wisdom for our own life. As we've been learning, you can pray the Lord's Prayer, or the publican's prayer, "Lord, have mercy," or the silent prayer of Zacchaeus, who didn't know what to say or pray, so he just came and sat in silence.